All right, so just for fairness, you didn't take the survey. You're not one of these survey respondents. So we're kind of getting a live read from you. I want to go to tariffs. So again, 41% said tariffs will directly impact their costs. When it comes to your company, again, pet and animal medicine, how are tariffs impacting your business?
Look, as a global company, tariffs remain dynamic, and we continue to watch it. But we have a global base. While about 50% of our business, just over, is in the U.S., we're very diversified across the world. And when we think about tariffs, actually, if you look at the U.S., we manufacture 60% of our manufacturing footprint is actually in the U.S., and most of our intellectual property sits in the U.S. So in essence, we're actually exporting more out of the U.S. than we're importing in terms of our products. And so we continue to have substantial mitigation strategies. And just like most major companies, we're doing all the scenario planning and so on. But our industry is very resilient, and this is just one other item we're keeping an eye on, but we have multiple ways to manage with.
So as I mentioned, you're in the animal and pet health business. We talked about with the CFOs about how policy, tariffs, everything else is impacting decision making. There's been quite a bit of uncertainty. As a CFO right now, how are you managing the uncertainty, not only when it comes to the macro environment, but also for some of your holdings for the company, whether you're holding treasuries, how much cash you're keeping on the balance sheet, and things like that?
Well, we have significant confidence in the future of our space. Animal health, as I said a second ago, is very resilient. And it's relatively young industry with fertile ground in terms of unmet needs. So what that means is, even in times of uncertainty like this, we remain focused on the long term. And so we're managing the short term in terms of driving the agility that we need around the business, but not to take our eyes off of the long term and continue to invest in the areas of unmet need that are going to continue to drive our space and our business. And as an innovation-led company that's purpose-driven, we have ample areas to drive that, and we'll make those investments even in times of uncertainty, although we'll be continuing to be very cautious in terms of some of the near term at the same time.
All right, cautious. That's an interesting word right now. As CFO, one of your key job functions is to help the CEO come up with the guidance for the company. And then your tax rate obviously influences the guidance. A lot of the CFOs are very confident that we're going to see an extension of the Trump tax cuts. Right now, how much is the one big beautiful bill and some of the provisions in there, whether it's tax cuts, SALT, obviously that impacts a lot of homeowners and may impact their willingness to spend on their pet. How much does that impact your ability to give guidance, decide on CapEx spending, things like that?
Well, as an innovation company, we favor policies that support innovation, and extending the tax cuts and some of those elements around that, continue to having immediate expensing of R&D, for example, and bonus depreciation. Those are all elements that actually help drive growth since the 2017 tax cut. And so the extension and continuation of those will support our business and are continuing to invest in the long term, not only in R&D, but also in terms of our footprint and where we manufacture as well.
All right, before we let you go, we got to ask you, just general, I know your earnings are coming up pretty soon. Just the animal health business, what's going on right now? We've heard a lot of talk about trade and agriculture being involved with it. What's going on in the animal health business just overall?
We were very pleased to have a very strong start to the year. I know there's a lot of attention to the consumer confidence and what that looks like. We saw across different markets, including the U.S., a dip in consumer confidence back in the early Q1. We're seeing that again. But despite that, we posted 9% operational growth across our business in the quarter, and actually maintained our organic operational growth, although FX actually raised the dollar equivalent to that as the dollar weakened a bit into the quarter. But we continue to see strength across the business and the resiliency. We think of animal health as being recession resistant.
Really?
And it's proven so over different economic cycles. If you go back, for example, to 2009 in the Great Recession, the industry grew about 3%, while most industries actually declined. And our business, because of our innovation on top of that, actually drives even greater growth, which is why we've been able to grow 3% above the industry that grows about 4 to 6% through these various cycles.